Hello! In this week's Sunday sit-down video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite cooperative games. This is fun. This is a fun topic. I counted up the number of cooperative games I've played, and it's looking like around 70 games that I've rated on Board Game Geek. And so I went through that list and found the ones that I love the most and that I am also the most excited to play again in general. So there are a few games that may not meet those qualifications that I still really enjoy, but they didn't quite make the list. I'll get to some honorable mentions in a second. I guess, I guess I'll just jump right in. I should say, I'll do honorable mentions first. The Unlock and Exit games. I actually haven't played Exit. Unlock, I've played a couple of those games. I've really enjoyed them. They're like escape room games in a box. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, I actually didn't enjoy it at all the first time I played it, but I've returned to it and found some missions that are a lot less combat-based and a lot more based on solving puzzles and solving mysteries, and I've really enjoyed them, come away with some great stories. The Reckoners, you can see it on my shelf back there. I've played it twice. I really enjoyed both plays of it, but it's still a little fresh for me to put on my top 10. Shadows over Camelot, I think, was the first cooperative game I played. I love the theme because I love Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, and the hidden trader element was really, really cool in it. It's still a game that I enjoy playing. Mechs versus Minions, also kind of on my shelf back there that you can maybe see. I really enjoyed playing through the campaign of Mechs versus Minions. I love the chaos created by the game by programming all these little robots. I think programming chaotic things actually works really, really well in a cooperative game in ways that don't work as well in a competitive game. There's also Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. I've only played game 7 of this, so I kind of skipped all the games 1 through 6, despite them that I've heard that they're brilliant in terms of how they unlock the game for you, and I love games that teach you how to play over time. But I really, really enjoyed game 7. I've loved the tension in it. And had a good time with it. I would definitely play it again. And Fog of Love, which you can see back there on the shelf, is a really, really unique, interesting game. I love romantic comedies as a movie genre, and I've really enjoyed my plays of Fog of Love as well. Two other ones, actually. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Season 2. I really enjoyed both of them. They had so many different clever mechanisms. I have many great memories from playing both of them, but it didn't quite make my list. Despite it being, I don't know, this is a weird one because it really is a spectacular game. Both of them are spectacular games, amazing feats of game design, but didn't quite make my list. And then Orleans Invasion, which is not the primary way to play Orleans. Orleans is a competitive game out of the box, and then you can buy an expansion called Invasion that adds a cooperative option, and it is a really, really interesting, fun cooperative puzzle that inspired a lot of actually what I did for the cooperative module for Scythe that you can find in The Rise of Fenris. So those are my honorable mentions. I will list them along with all the games in the top 10 in the comments in case you don't recognize any of these names and you want to look into them and learn more about them. You can look in the description to see the names of these games. Before I continue into the top 10, I should mention at first I ranked these games, but then I realized it's really number 1 and then numbers 2 through 10. And 2 through 10 are just, they could be any number. I could really mix and match them on any given day depending on how I'm feeling. And so I have to get number 1 out of the way. Number 1 is Time Stories. It should be very obvious if you watch this channel. Time Stories is my favorite game and my favorite cooperative game. Time Stories is a game where you are exploring a piece of fictional history. So you're going back in time, you're occupying a body of a person who's existing at some point in time, and usually there's a big twist on them that makes these fictional. I don't want to spoil anything really, but there's a pirate. The last one that I played was the pirate-themed one, Brotherhood of the Coast, and the things that were happening kind of were adjacent to actual history, but there was definitely a fictional, speculative side of them. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And I actually didn't know that the first time I played Time Stories. I thought we were just going back to real history. I like that we were going back to a speculative, alternate version of history. That to me is more fun as a gamer. I'll go through, I'll mention my favorite thing about Time Stories and with these other games. My favorite mechanism in Time Stories is that when you enter a new space, a new room, a new location, you have a first-person view of what that location looks like, and you decide based on the different cards in that location, so it's like a panorama spread of cards, You decide where you and where the other players want to go. What do you want to look at? What do you want to handle? And the only information you have there is the illustration. So you might say, okay, I'm going to combat. It looks like those guys are ready to fight. I'll go over there and see if I actually could fight those guys. Or if they want to talk, or if you want to bribe them or seduce them, whatever you want to do. And then you and any other players who've decided to go to the specific card that you've chosen at that location, you pick up the card, you flip it over, you read it to yourself, and you look at the illustration on it. You learn what you can from it. You put it back down, and then you meet up with the other players and you say, okay, guys, this is what I learned. I saw this weird flag that looked a little odd, had like a weird thing on it, and I talked to this person who talked about this one thing. You don't actually get to read the card or show it to the other players, and it adds a real aspect of collaboration and I guess a little bit of memory, but it feels like you are truly occupying the space of the game. Like you are really there looking at these things, talking about them with your friends, rather than playing a game. And it creates this wonderful experience on so many levels. Time Stories is my number one. Okay, so let me jump to all the other ones. These are in no particular order. I'll start with the ones that I can visually show you, that I can have on hand here. Burgle Brothers by Tim Fowers is one of my favorite cooperative games. All these are cooperative games. This is a heist game. I love heist movies, and I love feeling like I can rob a bank or whatever we're robbing a building here in Burgle Brothers. Something I don't want to do in real life. I don't want to go on a heist, but this escapism lets me do that in Burgle Brothers. Basically, the idea in Burgle Brothers is that you are breaking into a building, or you start inside the building, so you're not really going through the process of breaking in. And a building is either 2 or 3 stories tall. When you break into it at first, all you see is the first story, and you don't have a lot of information about it. There are these tiles that are spread out in a grid, and you move from tile to tile, either going blindly onto a tile or taking an action to look at what's on the tile first and flipping it over. And you're trying to find a safe somewhere on that floor, and you're also trying to find a staircase so you can get up to the next floor and eventually get out, because you're going to get out through the staircase to the roof. But my favorite thing about this game, and there's a lot, is the way that you can manipulate the guard. So there's a guard on every floor, and the guard moves around in a certain pattern. So you kind of know the way the guard is going to move, and you have to work around that so that you aren't caught by the guard. But you can also manipulate the guard. So you might set off an alarm in a certain place so the guard changes his or her route to get to that alarm while you sneak off and go someplace else. Or you might, the guard only moves if you take a turn on a floor where the guard is. And so you might try to end your turn on a floor where the guard isn't such an imminent threat to you and your fellow thieves. So I really like the manipulation of the AI in this game. All these cooperative games, or many of them, have an AI system, and I really like that you can manipulate it here in a very thematic way. So that's Burgle Brothers. The next one, so this is the newest addition to the list, I believe. Yeah, this is The Mind. The Mind is such a unique game. I mean, and if you want, we can get into the debate of whether or not it's a game. I don't want to get into that debate. But the way that we play The Mind in my group is that you are trying to play numbers 1 through 100 in order. Although you don't see all the numbers. You're just trying to get rid of your hand of cards, which are numbered 1 through 100, and you're trying to play them in order, in that sequential order. But you can't really communicate. And in the rules, the way to play The Mind is that you don't communicate at all. You just sit there in silence. You don't do anything. When we play The Mind, and this I think is kind of the standard way of playing The Mind, despite what the rules say, is that you can't talk and you can't communicate, but you can use other things to communicate a little bit. Like you can sit back in your chair and kind of say, I'm going to sit here for a while. You can even move to the other side of the room to show, hey, I've got such a high card that I'm not going to play for a while. You guys go ahead and do your thing. You can get like little, very subtle signals like that, and it can vary depending on the group. But I really like that limited communication aspect of the game. And it has led to some very dramatic moments for such a simple game containing just cards 1 through 100, as well as a few other cards that you can do. Like you have lives, and you also have a shuriken that you can use to get rid of your lowest card. But it's just a really, really interesting concept, and I've had a great time playing it. So whether or not it is a game in your opinion, I've enjoyed it, so it's on my favorites list. Let's see. Let's go with Flipships. Flipships is a dexterity game where you are flipping tiles onto other tiles to prevent an alien invasion. And what I think is brilliantly clever about this game is the dexterity element. It works so well in a cooperative game. In a competitive game, in a dexterity game, it doesn't always work because if I am less dexterous than you, or if I'm just unlucky with my flips or flicks or whatever we're doing, I could feel really bad about it. And I feel like I may not feel like I have agency over those decisions. In a cooperative game, you all share in those moments where you hit something that you really didn't expect, and those moments where you disastrously miss and you don't hit anything at all. And in Flipships, in every game of Flipships I've ever played, every player has had a moment where they mess up spectacularly and memorably, and every player has also had a moment where they did something remarkable and amazing to help the group. And I love that we were able to share in those moments instead of being competing against each other in those moments. That's Flipships, dexterity game, within my top 10 somewhere. Obviously, like I said, this isn't a ranked top 10. Let me mention one that I don't have here. Let's see. Sentinels of the Multiverse. I don't own Sentinels of the Multiverse, but I've come to really, really enjoy the game, especially when someone else is helping me run it a little bit. I don't know if I could teach Sentinels of the Multiverse or keep track of all the little tokens and counters, but it really does feel to me like I am a unique superhero cooperating with other superheroes to take down a villain in a unique environment. You're using completely unique decks of cards to run this game. So I have my own hero deck of cards. I have a few cards in hand. On my turn, I am playing a card, and I think I'm activating an ability. But I really, because of those unique decks of cards and the way they interact with other players and with the villain and with the environment, I really do feel like I'm a part of a superhero team. I remember playing this actually after watching Infinity War. I wanted to, like, the more than anything in the world, after watching that movie, I wanted to get together with my friends and play Sentinels so that I could feel like I was part of a group fighting Thanos. And we did. We had a blast doing that. So yeah, Sentinels of the Multiverse, I just had really a blast playing this game. I'll mention one other one that I don't have. Forbidden Desert. A neighbor has it, so I don't own Forbidden Desert. But it is my favorite, almost like traditional cooperative game where you are in the pandemic style. Pandemic has inspired so many, I don't want to say knockoffs, like spin-offs of cooperative games where you take a turn, you draw a card, some bad stuff happens, maybe some, like during your turn or maybe after your turn, some good stuff happens, and then it's the next person's turn. Same flow of the game. You've seen this in many, many cooperative games. But Forbidden Desert is my favorite of those. And I really, really love the shifting sands in Forbidden Desert. They add so much variety to the game. So at the end of your turn, the bad thing that happens is that a bunch of tiles in either a row or a column will move. And any tile that moves gets a sand token on top of it, which can impede your progress to move around the board. It can clog up tiles that you need to flip over and discover what's on them. And I just really like how the game can shift a lot during the game. And there are even moments where they won't shift, where they won't move, depending on how the card came out and how the board setup is. And that feels good too, when you're like, we beat you, game. We didn't do anything, but you didn't hurt us this time. That feels good too. So that's Forbidden Desert. Let's do Legendary Encounters. And I want to mention a good thing and a bad thing about Legendary Encounters. The good thing is that I just love this game. It has a really, really cool element where the aliens, the bad things, I think it's mostly aliens, but there are some other bad things that can happen to you. They are cards that come out, and this is a deck building game. Actually, there are two favorite things I should mention. But the first is when the cards come out, you don't get to see them at first. They come out face down. And you can either use actions to look at those cards and see what they are so that you can actually deal with them. So you flip them over, you know what they are, then you can actually deal with them. Or you can wait till they get to a certain point and then they deal with you. Then they attack you, and you don't know what was coming. So I love the thematic element of having these things that are out there in the dark. You don't know what they are, but at a certain point, they're going to get to you. And it adds this wonderful tension to the game of do we use our actions to look at these things and deal with them, or do we wait for them to get to us? And it's a little bit scary in a way because you don't know what's out there. I love that thematic element. I also like the cooperation in this game. There are certain types of cards that you can use when it's not your turn to assist another player. And I love this feeling of collaboration when I'm able to do something when it's not my turn to help other people on their turn. That feels really, really good. Not the bad thing. I guess it is a little bad thing. I found that in fact, this is a common theme with a number of these cooperative games. To add variety to the games, they often have a fairly elaborate setup. Like you gotta shuffle these cards together, you gotta mix and match these, you gotta undo this, you gotta do this. And that is like the one thing that gets in the way of me playing Legendary Encounters more, because it has a fairly odd setup that you have to go through, or fairly a laborious setup that you have to go through to create each scenario. And really, I should look through the rulebook more. Maybe there is a way to not do that, to not have to deal with the scenario, so I can just get it to the table more often. But many of these cooperative games have that issue where the setup itself is complicated, laborious, and just a little tedious. So I wonder why that is. I'd like to avoid that in the cooperative game that I'm designing. And really, I should have mentioned that before. I'm designing a cooperative game. That's why a big part of the reason why I'm talking about this today. It's been on my mind a lot lately. I've been working on it a lot lately. I'll talk about that at the end of the video for a little bit. Before I get there, let me see. Mysterium. Mysterium is one that I don't own, but I really, really love. Mysterium is a cooperative game where one player has died. They are a ghost, essentially, and they are communicating to the other players through their dreams, through the player's dreams. And they are doing that in the form of beautifully illustrated cards, where they're trying to convey kind of the clue-like things, like where the murder happened, who did it, what was the weapon that they used. But they can't talk. They're just using these images to do that. And so there's one player who's completely silent. They are just handing out image cards. The rest of the players are talking together and trying to figure out, trying to help each other. But also, you're making your own choice in the end based on what you think the solution is for the current cards that are being handed to you. I love the limited communication aspect of this game between the ghost and the other players. But I like that it still allows a bunch of the players to talk and interact with each other. There's some cooperative games where they're like, nope, you can't talk at all. Kind of like the Mind. The Mind does have that. And sometimes that can feel really limiting in the wrong game, I think, where you can't do that. But so I like that many of the players are allowed to talk, even though it is a limited communication in a cooperative game. That's Mysterium. We're down to the last few, and I believe I own these two. Yep, down to the last two. Oh, this is a heavy one. Seventh Continent. This and Time Stories are a major influence on my exploration game. This is a masterful game of exploration, really, cooperative exploration, where you are exploring a rather large continent, the seventh continent, Antarctica, or this speculative version of Antarctica. And you're discovering it as you go. You're moving from tile to tile. And just there's so many things to explore and discover. My favorite element are the hidden numbers. So on every little tile there, or not every tile, on some tile, on any tile, there could be a hidden number. And if you notice it, you look up a card corresponding with that number, and it might change the location a little bit. It might give you a little bit of information about what's there at the location. Usually it gives you a different version of that location card. And it just feels good to be the one to spot that hidden number and to help your group in what that means. And usually it's related to something on the illustration. So there might be like footprints. And the game's way of telling you what to do with those footprints that you noticed is that near the footprints will be a very subtly hidden number, like 127. So you look up card 127, and it'll tell you what those footprints go along with. I really, really like that element of this game. But there's a lot of other cool stuff going on in Seventh Continent as well. And last, Summit. Summit is both a cooperative and a competitive game. I've never played the competitive game because I love the cooperative version of it so much. You're basically climbing a mountain with your friends, trying to get to the top and trying to get back down to the bottom. I've had some very memorable moments playing this game because there are some really fun events that happen to you along the way. This is kind of a rare occurrence of a game where I like where things happen to me and and that creates a better experience for me. Often, I like to have agency. I like to have control over the things that are happening. But in one particularly memorable session of Summit, on my first turn, so like 7 o'clock in the morning, we're just starting to climb up the mountain. We've got all day. On my first turn, I decided through this event card that I was so hungry that I had to eat my own Sherpa, which is very dark now that I'm saying it out loud, but it just led to a very funny, memorable moment that like literally I just eaten breakfast, but now I'm so hungry that I had to eat another human being, which is terrible. But we had a good time with that idea, and it has come up over many sessions of Summit. But my favorite mechanism in this is the leapfrog mechanism, and this is such a good cooperative mechanism. It's also used in Deep Sea Adventure, which is that if I have moved up a mountain and my pawn is here, my pawn does not count as a space for you as you are moving. So this creates such natural cooperation between players because we're trying to position ourselves so that we can use each other to get farther in the game in a mechanical way. I absolutely love this mechanism, this leapfrog mechanism. So clever, and it makes perfect sense in a climbing game that if I'm there to help you get past this certain point in the mountain, and so you don't have to use your energy in a certain space because I'm there to help. So yeah, okay, so those are my top 10 favorite cooperative games, and I do have a question for you. Well, a couple questions. First is, what are your top 10 cooperative games? Naturally, I'm very interested in knowing that. And my second is related to my cooperative game. My cooperative game is an open world exploration game. I haven't talked too much about it, but I've mentioned it here and there, little ways. I'd mentioned that it's been inspired by the Seventh Continent, by Time Stories, and by Zelda Breath of the Wild, the video game. The focus there being not on Zelda, but on Breath of the Wild, the open world exploration discovery elements of Breath of the Wild. And in that note, so the question I have for you, and this is going to be somewhat out of context, but I'll try to explain it a little bit, is if you were able to enter a video game, let's say a video game, or a scenario like Westworld, if you've seen the show Westworld, where you kind of have an open world at your disposal, and you don't have real world consequences, and you're given a path. Say you actually see a physical path, or someone comes up to you and says, hey, someone stole my horse. They give you a side quest, basically. They say, someone stole my horse. Will you go check on the horse? If you could turn off that path, if you could veer off of it, if you could ignore that quest, and you could do whatever you wanted, almost in defiance of the world, of the game, of the path. You say, I see the path, I am not walking on it because I want to do this crazy thing that you didn't expect me to do. What would you do? What would you do in defiance of the game or of the world? What would feel good to you to do? I want to know that. That's my question for you. And the reason I want to know it is that my game is built around that concept. There are things that you can do that the game guides you towards. They say you could do this thing if you want. And to survive, there are a few things that you need to do to survive, but they're not the focus of the game. But it is all about seeing the path and saying, I'm going to go this way instead, and letting you have a heck of a time doing whatever that thing is, and enabling you to do it. That is a major focus of the game. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, because while I've thought through many of the different scenarios that could happen, I'm sure there's something that you might say that I didn't think of, and the game is still very much in progress. It's not expected to release this until probably 2020, and so it's very pliable at this point. So I'd love to hear your thoughts there, in addition to your favorite cooperative games. Thanks for joining me on this Sunday, and I will see you on Tuesday for my favorite mechanism. I think I'll probably be talking about Trajan on Tuesday. I'll see you then. Take care.